Hey everybody, Kelly with Kelly Cameron Coaching, checking in to see how you're doing on this fine Monday morning. Today I want to talk about conflict, which is not everybody's favorite subject, and I have to admit I am a conflict avoider. But first, before we jump into that, introducing myself, I'm Kelly with Kelly Cameron Coaching. If you're not familiar with me, I work with high achieving parents and parentpreneurs who are so busy doing their businesses and they're really wanting their home lives, households, families, relationships to run as smoothly and efficiently as their businesses, but they're not. So there's a lot of stress, a lot of chaos, a lot of conflict, and it's kind of like a hidden thing. Like we're not super proud of how maybe home life isn't as stellar as the white picket fence that maybe we're showing on Instagram. So those are the clients that I help support, and yeah, been there, done that. So let's talk about conflict today. Conflict is not one of those fun topics that everybody likes to talk about. A lot of people like to avoid conflict, and it kind of stems from how conflict was presented when we were kids. So maybe your household was high conflict and it was scary, and there was a lot of yelling. And so just maybe subconsciously you vowed that when you grew up, there would just be no conflict. If you can avoid conflict, then everything would be okay. Also, sometimes when we were kids, there was conflict and it wasn't resolved. So that's also a scary thing. It just kind of leaves everything hanging. So again, if you avoid conflict, then you don't have to worry about not resolving. And then there's also families where kids grew up that there wasn't conflict, or at least not any conflict that the kids saw. So not having an example of parents or adults in your life having some sort of conflict and then coming to a resolution, a healthy resolution, so that kids can see and learn, oh, it's okay to have conflict and you can talk it out and you can resolve it. So a lot of us come from childhoods where conflict wasn't modeled in a healthy way. So we either follow the same patterns that we had when we were a kid, or we do the opposite because it didn't seem to work when we were kids. So I was talking to a client of mine the other day who conflict has always been really scary for her. And she and her ex-husband, they both came from households and childhoods where conflict was super scary. So they just didn't do conflict. They avoided things. They didn't talk about those. They didn't have those hard conversations. They didn't talk about the things that they might be conflicted about or might not be in agreement about, or really they just didn't know because they weren't having those conversations. So in their early relationship, when there would be some sort of conflict, instead of confronting it head on and talking about it and working through it together, they would avoid it. They would really run away from it. Maybe one of them would take off for a couple of days, clear their head, and just kind of get over the emotion of it. And then they would, excuse me, they would come back together, and it was like nothing had ever happened. And it was a pattern that they repeated with each other for years, that if there was some sort of conflict, some sort of uncomfortable situation, you just avoid it. And it worked for many years. Not the healthiest. And from the outside looking in, all of their friends and family thought that they were the perfect couple, that they had everything going for them. They seemed to get along. They were good looking. They were nice. They were successful. Everything looked good from the outside. But on the inside, when things got rough, they didn't know how to deal with it. So as they got older and spent more time together, they just kind of cemented this pattern of avoiding the conflict. So as you can imagine, we all have our trials and tribulations. At some point, there was a conflict that was too big for them to handle because they didn't have the skills together to deal with that conflict and to work through it together. So they tried, they got outside help, counseling, and it didn't work. And it was really, really sad. But they split up because they didn't know how to do conflict together. So this client of mine, she was really concerned about, okay, what about a future relationship? How do I make sure I have a healthy relationship? And I know how to deal with conflict. So we've worked a lot on what are your boundaries? What's important to you? What are your priorities? What are your values? And what are you willing to fight for? And when I say what are you willing to fight for, you don't have to get into a slugfest with anybody. Conflict doesn't have to be scary. Conflict doesn't have to be like over the top, crazy yelling, screaming. It doesn't have to be like that. It can just be a hard conversation, having the bravery and the confidence in yourself that you're going to be okay no matter what. We're not calling anybody names. Nobody has to be nasty and mean about it. It's just, hey, I need to talk about something. This is a hard thing. This is, an uncomfortable situation, or this is a situation that we need to address. We can't just slide it under the rug and expect everything to be okay. We're adults. We know what happens when conflict gets brushed under the rug. Things blow up in your face later on. So let's deal with it now. So I've been working with this client. She's made huge progress. And it's just an interesting kind of case study to see what happens when you're not dealing with that conflict. And it can be really sad and really disappointing. So huge life lesson. Let's not avoid conflict. We don't have to, blow it up and, make it big and, Italian like on TV or anything, but it's important to learn how to deal with conflict and bringing it around for the kids. We're parents here. How do we teach our kids healthy conflict and healthy relationships and those challenging, difficult conversations? Kids need to see conflict and resolution. They need to see from beginning to end, oh my gosh, this is a really tough situation. We're a little stressed out about it. But this is the conclusion that we've come to. This is what we've worked out. So important for our kids to learn from point A to point B, conflict and resolution, healthy resolution, so that they're not growing up avoiding conflict for the rest of their lives as well. So those are my thoughts for today. If you are having any trepidation, hesitation, issues with conflict, and you're not sure what to do with it, first of all, you are not alone. I see you, I hear you. So many of us grew up without those skills about how to deal with conflict. So if you are one of those people, you're not alone. There's so many of us out there. If you want some help, if you want to talk it out, book a call with me and we will talk more about it, because don't let your life or, your dreams or current relationship go down the drain because you don't know how to deal with conflict. So conflict is so important. We're cozying up to conflict today. Sounds very counterintuitive, but it is so true. So be well. I hope you guys are doing well. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. And I will talk to you soon. Take care.